Say, this is Mitch DeVore, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yeah, I'm not.
I didn't. Can you say this is Mitch DeVore, and you're watching the Break It Down show? I didn't hear it. Mitch?
This is Mitch DeVore, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yeah, Mitch and I are trying to limp through some. That's right. Yeah, Mitch and I are trying to limp through some wireless connections. Hopefully, the signal will improve for both of us as we go along the way here. Mitch is a buddy of mine from way, way back. We went through counterintelligence school together. And one of the fun things about these kind of shows is that, first off, Mitch is doing me a favor for coming on. It's just not his thing. And to have him come on, I want to say thanks for that. I know that this is not your favorite endeavor to do, but it is cool that you're doing it. And I would love to be able to share some of your background. So let's just start with counterintelligence school and that time, and what memories come to mind from 1994 when we did this, damn near 30 years ago, and what are your memories of us in school in general? I didn't hear a single word of any of that. God, this is so frustrating. I hate wireless sometimes. All right, so that didn't work at all. Did you say anything at all, Mitch? I didn't hear if you said anything at all.
Well, I showed up. Showed up, and as I was walking in, they said, "Hey, you'll have a roommate eventually. He's in jail." And that was my introduction to AIT at Fort Huachuca.
Hey, I have an idea. We should try this via your phone, because this is...
He'll be back in a few days.
I want to hear this story so bad. Hey, Mitch, let's try this via your phone, and we'll just pretend like the front part of the show never existed.
Yeah, it's a little bit delayed. I don't know. Oh, we can get through this, but basically,
all right. So, okay. So everybody, thanks for hanging in there for a second. We got Mitch trying to figure out how to get back to connected with us. Yeah, wireless. You just can't rely on it. So when you need to. Anyhow, apologies for that. Mitch is going to have some good stories. As you hear, apparently his AIT roommate was in jail when he first arrived. So once Mitch gets back into this thing, we will have him back on, and hopefully the signal will be stronger. How's everybody doing? Hey, it's the end of May, or the latter half of May, and we're all tax day today officially, right? That's kind of fun. And we'll all be doing that. Counterintelligence school. So that's done at Fort Huachuca, which is in southern Arizona. When I say southern Arizona, I mean south of Tombstone, south of Tucson, basically on the border. You can see into Mexico if you're high enough up and in the right part of the mountains. It's way down there. And there's a bunch of other intel schools. It's sort of, they often have called it Pentagon West, because there's a lot of planning and intel things. So you have signal intelligence, imagery analysts are there. Obviously, the human intelligence folks like me and the other folks. That we have regular analysts who just take all of the data and gather it. And all of that stuff is taught at Fort Huachuca. They have Marines, international, Navy, Air Force, all kinds of different services all go to schools there. I taught there. I taught a source operations course there called SIFSO. It doesn't exist anymore, but basically it's a source operations course that the military offered. And that course, that time as teacher, actually led to me meeting and getting to know Johnny Walker, because I taught at that course, SIFSO. Let's see how we do here with the phone edition. Hey, Mitch, welcome back.
Hopefully this will be a little bit better for you.
Hey, it's already better. It's already better. All right, so let's start again. Okay, so AIT, counterintelligence, all of the background stuff. Talk about your memories of that, and we'll just dive in right there.
Yeah, I was saying I showed up over a 4th of July weekend, and they take me up to my room. You know that those barracks were brand new back then.
Yeah.
And the first thing they say is, "Hey, you have a roommate, but he's in Mexico in jail. So we're not sure when he's going to be back." Then this is a CI agent, so that was my introduction. So I had nothing to do. You know, they had the pool tables. So I stroll down, I walk into the day room, and there's Pete sitting cuddled up to some nice looking lady watching TV. And that was my introduction to Pete Turner, my first
nice.
day.
Yeah. That was working fast, man. That's good for me. Good job.
You were on it.
I was in those day rooms watching things like the O.J. Simpson stuff. Do you remember that? That happened when we were in school. But also when I came back as cadre, I was staff duty NCO. And so I was in the day room watching some baseball, probably playoff time, if I remember correctly. And I don't have my blouse on, right? Because it's hot and I'm trying to be comfortable. And I'm also trying not to freak people out because I'm there. I'm trying to just be like their older brother, you know, because that's really the staff duty's job, is make sure nothing crazy happens. And these are all AIT folks. So some guy comes in and starts changing the channel. And I'm like, I can't have that. You know, you can't just come in and change the channel in the day room. And I'm like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, well, I want to watch something. And I'm like, yeah, but we're all sitting here watching this game. And he's looking at me and he's like, I don't care. And I'm like, you should think to yourself, who am I? Why am I sitting here? Yeah. I don't have rank on my shoulder. Maybe you ought to ask someone a question. And they're all looking at him like he's effing crazy because, you know, ultimately I'm in charge. And I'm the nicest guy in the world, you know that. But hilarious that those day rooms, all these different things that happen in the world, you often hear, oh, I was in a day room one time and this crazy thing happened.
Yeah, I showed up because I lived in Arizona at the time. So I just, you know, it was a 3.5 hour drive down to AIT. And I just showed up and I walked up to the desk, and the sergeant on duty is like, hey, you need to get out of here and go put on your Class A's and come back. If a drill sergeant catches you, man, you're in trouble. And that was the best piece of advice I got the whole time, because it's not sooner than I walked back into the room, they were there on me, you know, and that's when the whole introduction began.
It's funny. You're right, because, you know, you're a reservist. Everybody's wearing the battle dress uniform BDUs, and you show up and you don't have your Class A's on. I almost changed in midstream into battle dress uniform instead of traveling in Class B's or whatever it was, because I'm like, this is uncomfortable. I don't want to fly on an airplane in this stupid uniform. Let me just wear my other one.
I was in cities. Wow. I had just driven in. I just drove in and got up and got to the desk. And, oh, you got to put a uniform on.
What else do you remember from that time?
I know we had a pretty hilarious class. And the weird thing was, we had a guy in our class, I can't remember his last name at the moment, but he was a year or two behind me in high school in Illinois. And we ended up in the same 97 Bravo course in 1994, 10 years after I got out of high school.
Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny?
I was an old man.
Yeah. You were an old man for back then. The other thing that was funny is they mixed seasoned Army people who were transitioning into our job with us guys who didn't have a job yet. You know, so right. We got a bunch of knucklehead college students a lot of times, but even younger folks. And so you have these seasoned Army people that are there. They're careerists, they're professionals in some cases. And then you got knuckleheads like us, all just like trying to figure out the Army from day one.
That helped being a little older, so I didn't stress out too much. That was the good part. It wasn't really that difficult of a course as far as academic. It was just being in the Army. Around a bunch of kids.
Around a bunch of kids. And then the other thing I remember, we had a bunch of characters in the class. You know, one of the guys, I can't remember his last name, but there's a guy named Deloya that fell in love with a girl there. And we would imitate we would do imitations of people doing imitations of people doing imitations. There was a guy named Green. There's like this black guy, and he had this kind of raspy voice.
He got in a real bad car accident down in Florida.
He did. And I don't know where he's at or how he is today, but I remember that. But I remember you and I would do the imitation of the imitation of the imitation of.
Like the guy falling asleep standing up in the back of the room, and he actually fell down, took out a table and a desk.
That's the guy. I can't remember his name.
Thomas or something like that.
Yeah.
Had the little pencil thin mustache. Oh,
yes.
That's hilarious.
This is okay. So when you're in an Army class or military class in general, a lot of times you sit there and the person is trained to teach you, but they lean on the lecture method pretty hard. And so they give you this really dry material, and they're not paid to be good at it or to be entertaining. They're paid to deliver the information. And so it can be very boring and very dry. And so what you do is, if you feel like you're going to stand up or fall asleep, you stand up in the back of the classroom, because the theory is you can't fall asleep standing up.
That guy fell asleep in every class, and we got a 10-minute break every hour.
Yeah. It's really hard to stay awake in those hot classrooms. I mean, I'd have to stand up a lot. I don't know about you, but I'd just be so bored,
At least it wasn't a tent. It was a classroom.
That's true. What did you learn in counterintelligence school?
The lecture stuff, you didn't really get much out of it. They just were checking that box. But what I really got out of it was the report writing. That was the 2-week phase where, I don't know, about 25% of the people failed out. And that phase is really where I learned how to plan and document everything I was doing. And even to this day, that's the skill set you have to have. That was number one.
When you talk about that report writing, it was all with a pencil, and we had to mechanically write every single thing, even like how we hash marked things and everything. What did you not learn that you should have been taught?
Well, I studied it in college, but the interpersonal communication, the nonverbal, how you pick that up when you're talking to someone, when you're, trying to blend in the, Tombstone, Arizona, in the graveyard, or blending in at the zoo in Tucson, just trying to talk to people and look normal. Right. When you have a short haircut and you're driving a Ford Taurus.
And the guy next to you is driving a Ford Taurus too.
And you're not allowed to, what was that town? Bixby, or one of those hippie towns? We weren't allowed to go in there because it scared all of them. They thought we were federal agents. Yeah,
which technically they were right.
Yeah.
So what Mitch is talking about is like our training. We would do surveillance training, and we would go into these towns and do what we'd call source meetings. And you're trying to meet people and get to know them and work on your interpersonal skills. Now, the person you're interacting with, you recognize, and they're there to play a role. And so they're going to be the mayor of Tombstone or the proprietor of Big Nose Kate's or whatever it is. And so they're not really that person. They're just an Army person, but they're a counterintelligence agent. And so you're going to talk to them, and you're going to do what we call elicitation. You're going to try to ask questions to find things out. Were you good at elicitation?
At that point, no, not really. I don't think any of us were. I think some of us, like you, could talk to anybody anytime, but I'm normally a pretty quiet person, and I don't talk a lot. So it was tough for me, for sure.
What does bad look like? I mean, being unprofessional at it, being not undertrained, but you're just not practiced is one thing. But what does it look like when it's bad?
Well, it's just obvious that you're just trying way too hard, and everyone knows why you're there, who you are, and what you're doing, because it's however many classes they run through there a year. I think it was a 4-month class, so you're looking at 2 to 3 classes a year, 25 students. Everyone knows what's going on, so it's just trying not to look like who you are and what you're doing.
Yeah, they would overlap those classes. If they could, they would start one every month, but it was hard to get all that done.
I remember one of the hardest things I failed on was, well, I didn't really fail, actually. I thought I did pretty good, was the vehicle part of it, where you're using the old school handheld radios that have a limited range, and you're trying to coordinate 4 or 5 cars going down the highway and off side roads, and they really enjoyed trying to lose you.
It's hard to follow someone, really hard.
Well, it's hard to coordinate 4 vehicles following someone, and then when people start getting out of the car, it's almost impossible.
Even if that person's not trying to lose you, they can shake you. You're right. coordinating, and then there's also costume changes and card changes, like not at the schoolhouse, but in real life. You're going to change your look, and you're going to get into a different car so that the person has a harder time making you, right?
Yeah. I know you said you were an instructor down there as well. I actually did some role playing. I was an instructor for counterintelligence operations for combat arms units, and I would go down to Fort Polk or to Fort Irvine in Texas, and I would role play and pretend I was that guy. So it was kind of nice, 15, 20 years later to be on the other side of it. I'm sure you felt the same way.
Yeah, when I did it, I was just coming back from Bosnia, so I had just done source operations, and I'd just been in the schoolhouse a couple of years before. And so when I was back, I was as trained as anybody in the Army was, because they had a whole new program for source operations. And then I got to watch people who were my mentors, my seniors, in some cases, like a couple of guys who were newly minted warrant officers were my bosses, that had come through this course. And it was a very desirable course. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was very desirable. So I also got to see them struggle with the doctrine. And I knew, as someone who'd run sources, I knew how to be a good rabbit of a source, make them come after it and really challenge them. You must have learned those kind of things too when you were role playing.
I did. The thing was, though, I wasn't a CI agent in the Army for very long. I switched it up after about 3 years and went over to psychological operations, which in hindsight, they work hand in hand, because even when I was in Kosovo, I was doing psychological operations. I was programming 24 weekly radio and TV shows in 3 languages. And the funny thing was, when they came to give us our in brief for the base, you remember Barber? I can't remember his first name. He was from New York, black guy, real loud talker. He was the guy giving the briefing, and he noticed me and didn't say anything. And for the rest of that deployment, I would take him out to shows, and I was one of the few guys that had the clearance that could go in and get the briefings. So I was in the know all the time. I was feeding. It was marketing, basically. I was feeding that guy everything he needed to get promoted, basically.
Nice. Yeah, Barbara, I remember that guy. He was my battle buddy on drown proofing day. And so this is the thing. Yeah, he sank. Yeah. More importantly, he was very nervous about the water, right? He wasn't comfortable in it. And so I sank too. And so we did the thing where you have to throw your shirt up around your face and fill it full of air, but you have to let go of and I don't call the deep end the deep end. I just call it the pool, because I can swim, And right. So I let go of the edge, and then I start to sink because I've got boots and a uniform on. And then I go to, and I let it go pretty deep because I'm not going to drown. It's just not going to happen. And so then I start blowing air in. He had already decided it's time to save Pete. And I see this big old hand come down, and he's trying to find me. And I'm looking up, and I'm like, dude, just relax. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, the guy I had couldn't swim at all. And I float. I don't know, I guess I'm buoyant. But he's like, hey, Mitch, when I jump in, I'm going straight to the bottom. It's 15-foot pool. He's like, I'm just going to put my arm up. Grab it soon, because I don't know how long I can hold my breath. So basically, I practically dove in, went down and pulled him back to the top. And then we both practically drowned trying to get back to the side, because he was standing on the bottom by the time I got to him.
Wow. Yeah. It's funny. They call it drown proofing. You're in no way drown proof. Maybe you're drown resistant, but they don't teach you how to swim. So whatever version of drown proofing you get, not that you would need it that often in the Army, but it's kind of a silly class to have.
It's a little tough to swim with boots on.
And they give you one crack at it. Maybe you do it one other time in the Army, and that's it. But you really don't ever drown proof ever again.
Actually, because I was in it at the time, PsyOps was considered special operations. I had to do it every year.
Okay. Now, so you do switch. You go from CI to PsyOp, and that's that's high speed. And when you got there, how much of that job bled over CI over to the PsyOp side?
Almost all of it, because it was all, instead of elicitating, now I'm marketing ideas. I'm marketing a message, and I'm trying to get the target audience. We're doing our target audience analysis, and we're going out and we're pitching them, and we're paying them, to play messages and to work nice with us. So it really went hand in hand. It was a very smooth transition. Because I had the security clearance, they threw me right in the S2 shop, which is the intelligence section. So I did a lot of the same briefings, same things I was doing in CI, I was doing in PsyOp. I just was, a squad leader or whatever, a platoon leader for a while, and did all that.
Did you get to deploy as a CI agent at all?
Not in the Army, but I did, we contracted together too. Our
Right.
history goes back quite a ways. So
Yeah.
I did deploy to Iraq for about a year and a half as a tactical human support team lead. So I did deploy. I did work with several different Army units, but I was not a soldier as a CI on deployment. I was always PsyOps.
Do you feel like you ever became a good counterintelligence agent in terms of like being deployable and ready to do the job?
Always, always.
Okay.
Yeah, I was always deployable. I was always qualified. Everything was always up to date. I never had any issues. Whenever there was a deployment, I was the first one to raise my hand. So that was
But
what we were there
were you
for.
any good at being a counterintelligence agent? Like, would you say, yeah, you can put me in any situation and I'm going to be all right?
Well, yeah, that was the job. That's what I do for a living now. So
Right.
I've been doing it
Okay.
off and on since 1993, 94. So it's a long time.
It's a long time. And then when would you say you became proficient at the job where you could actually do it yourself, maybe even mentor somebody? How long did that take?
Well, that was my deployment to Iraq is really where it all came together. I learned the ropes in Kosovo working with some of the other guys. I was doing the job. I was interacting with, coalition forces from 6 different countries, all the source stuff, all the reports, everything. And when I got to Iraq, we didn't really have a team lead. So within about 3 weeks, because I was an older guy then too, I've always been the older guy. They asked me if I'd be the team lead. And based on the fact that I didn't see anyone better to do the job, I said, sure, I'll do it. And within about 6 months, I think it was a crash course. I think I was pretty good by then.
What did it take? Like, what did you pick up that you didn't have before?
Confidence, for one. Just knowing you
Okay.
could do the job. I mean, because when you come out of the school, you've got a lot of uncertainties. I'm a people person, but then again, I'm also a pretty reserved, quiet person. And I think that was the biggest thing, was getting out of my comfort level and talking to people and interacting. I worked with a lot of Kurdish soldiers, so just knowing doing the research on the country you're in, knowing your target audience, the big thing. And once I learned to do my research, I was pretty good at it.
What do you think agents struggle with? I mean, there's so many aspects, and I always say, like, I use these examples, but this is just kind of illustrates, this even capture all of it. You can become a lie detector person, you can become a bug implanter, you can become a bug sweeper, you can become a source operator, you can go work in embassies. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do. You can literally go hunt for no shit, like real spies, like from other countries, and do criminal investigations and use that badge of credentials. What do you think people lack when they go on a tactical deployment and they show up? Because I know we had a bunch of reservists that were turboed through the training, and they did it all via video teleconference, and they had no idea what they were doing when they got there.
Yeah,
and it was not a knock on them. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, it's not the people as a whole. It was the Army as a whole was lacking in capable human intelligence collectors. I think when everything went computerized and cyber, they kind of forgot about the human side of it. So it was really hard finding competent human intelligence collectors. It was just a skill that was lacking.
What does good look like to you? Like when you see someone who's good at the job, what are the hallmarks?
Well, you know what they're doing, but you don't really see them doing it. They can do it just like it's a regular conversation, and you don't see them taking notes. But when you see them back in the office, they're writing a 2-page report with the memory that what they can retain is. And I mean, I do it myself. I'm sure you did it. It's amazing how much you can retain without taking a note.
Yeah.
And that's a skill that was lacking as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That is, and do it while drinking, like someone, like we're drinking, right? But you have to, like, someone has to be like on record with their brain.
Yeah. And with the kids today, they're so easily distracted. You have to really be on point all the time, because you never know what little nugget they're going to give you that's going to turn the tide on whatever it is you're trying to get.
I'm going to stop right here in this concept, because it's so important to understand this if you're a collector. Like, okay, first off, you have to be prepared to go on the mission, and that can mean a lot of things. Like on our team, we were a small little tiny team in Bosnia. So we have all of the regular team support stuff, the camp support stuff, all the things, the taskings from hire to, hey, what's the vehicle number, and all that crap to do. And then you got to go out and do your job. And then you got to come back and do more of your job because you and the interpreter and the team sergeant, whoever it is, you all have to put that report together. Hey, here's what I heard. Here's what I remember. What do you remember? And then put all that into some kind of consumable report. Then send it over to your boss. I send it over to Mitch. Mitch reads it and he's like, change this. Let's add this in there. And then, a long time, right? When you write reports, it's an enormously challenging job to do counterintelligence in the field, collecting, whether you're a TAC unit guy or a counterintel guy. There's just a lot of work, man.
Yeah, I would say that when I was doing, even with the PsyOps part of it, on deployments, you would be, on talking to people for maybe 3-4 hours a day, but I was working 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. So, I mean, that's how much time you had to put in just to get whatever end product you were going for.
Is that unique to the field? Like, I mean, I know a lot of people work that hard, but forward deployed folks, like you think about an infantry guy who goes out, he'll be on the same patrol as me, but he doesn't have all of the other work. Like, okay, he may have other tasks, to take care of the camp, go pull guard duty, go burn poo, whatever. But the actual like brain power work that we have to do, I don't know that a lot of jobs have that.
No, but you got to also put it in the text. Everyone's job is important.
Right, of course.
I come from a military family, and my brother was an infantry officer. My nephew's an infantry NCO. They're doing things that we don't even think about, that we don't have the frame of mind for, because that's what they were trained to do. We're trained to observe and report and ask the appropriate questions. So I think that their job is just as hard, but as far as the brain power, we just have a whole different focus.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And you're right. Like, those guys are busy nonstop. 20-hour days are normal. Heck, 36-hour days, as you know, are quite common.
6-7 days in a row, out in the field. I lived in a Humvee for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Lucky I had a cot if I was lucky. We didn't even have a base.
Yeah. Yeah, I've slept in some really weird places. And you have to get good at sleeping. I mean, if you're not a sleeper, man, good luck.
Well, if nothing else, the Army teaches you how to sleep standing up or wherever, cold, wet, hungry. You sleep.
Yeah.
Heat your meal on the engine while it's still warm.
It is fun, though.
I miss it every day. The deployment part of it. I don't miss any of the garrison stuff, other than the team.
Okay.
But I want to get back now.
Yeah. I want to get back to the day-to-day collection thing. When you go into a village or you're with a team that's doing that and you're supporting them, how do they know who to talk to? How do they decide, like, anything? Like, when's it too dangerous? Is this working? How do they decide all that stuff? I mean, is this different for everybody? So I'm just curious how you see that.
Well, it's just being aware of your situation and your environment. There's some, places you just can't go. You've got to do some Afghanistan stuff. I believe I didn't get to do that, but there were places where you just knew. You could tell by the way people looked at you, the way they did not want to talk to you, or avoided you, or you walk or drive down a street and all of a sudden you're the only one on the street. I think that's a pretty good sign you shouldn't be there.
When you compare counterintelligence to psychological operations, and again, these jobs dovetail so nicely, would you rather be out on the street as a PsyOper or a collector?
PsyOp every day. I love it. The variety of it. I was a media guy in college. So my first deployment to Kosovo, like I said, I was doing radio and TV shows. I was doing everything from planning the route to helping provide security, to writing the scripts, to recruiting the guests we took out with us, to recruiting radio and TV stations, to going to the big bank and getting money and paying them. I mean, we went everything. It was really exciting. I got a pretty fun, not a funny, but one story I'll say real quick is when we got to Kosovo. I hadn't even been on the ground 24 hours, and they sent us out on a mission to a town about 7 miles away. And we roll into town in our up armor Humvees, which I never had in Iraq, but we had them in Kosovo for some reason. And we did our tactical parking, and we get out to go talk to the Greek commander that was outside the radio station. All of a sudden, a young kid walks up to me with a plastic bag, and he pulls something out of it, and he starts to come at me. And I looked at it, and it was a hand grenade. Hadn't even been on the ground 24 hours.
Oh,
And a 10, 11-year-old kid tries to hand me a hand grenade. So I'm cupping it, taking off the vest, covering it up, getting everyone back, you know. And we had a captain with us that was in a meeting, so we had to pull him out of the meeting. We had to go to the Greek commander and say, we got live, ammunition on the ground. We had to get DOD in there. It was just a crazy, crazy day for my first 24 hours. And that was Kosovo.
yeah. We
And
had a similar.
from Bosnia,
Yeah.
you don't walk in grass.
No, no. You only walk in known trails.
I had a hard time mowing the lawn for 3 months when I got back. I couldn't walk on grass for a while because everything over there had all the bombs.
Yeah, it's crazy. We had a neighborhood that recognized that we were Americans and they wanted to help, and they would bring us munitions. And it's terrifying because, one, are they coming to kill you? Or two, are they coming to help? Because they want to get this stuff out of their house, And so you have to make that go, no go in terms of killing the person decision. And then I'm not a bomb expert,
Yeah.
And it ruins your whole day, by the way.
Right.
Just for anybody listening.
How old is it? Where's it from?
Say it again.
Yeah, and the first day when they had their first election, we were out on a patrol and we were walking through the town, and it was like 4th of July type celebration. Kids, they're running around. It's nighttime, and we were on patrol, and a teenage kid threw like a bottle rocket M50 kind of thing that exploded right by me. I mean, my ears were ringing, and like you said, it's everything you do to not just turn and just drop them.
Yeah,
it was tough.
It is tough. And then the other thing is once, and this is the thing a lot of people don't really realize, once you find unexploded ordnance, a grenade, whatever it's going to be, you own it until the bomb squad shows up. And that's if they're available. On TV, they're there in 20 minutes. In reality, it's 6 hours, 8 hours, whatever it is, because they're not, even if they're on standby, they're not on like standby with the engine running. Like they got to get the guy from the chow hall. They all got to get in their uniforms. They've got to check their vehicles. They've got to submit a report that we're going. All these things take a lot of time. And so once you find that thing, your work for the day is basically done. Whatever you got done at that point, that's it, because you have no time to do anything else. It is an absolute. I hated it whenever they gave us something because it just ruined everything we were trying to do that day.
Yeah. Oh yeah, everything stops.
Yeah, everything stops. Everything stops,
We
and
were
you just
lucky.
wait.
We took they were in charge. Yeah. We took the officer in charge of the EOD guys out on a couple TV shows and radio shows where we could go to a pizza place and have a couple beers and talk to people. So we had a really good rapport with them. So I could radio them directly, usually, and it would cut the time way down. But you're still, it's everything else stops till they're done. And they would take us for the disposal too and let us watch them set it up and blow stuff up.
That's always fun. I wanted to ask you about that aspect of it too, because when you go out and you're maintaining your relationship on the camp, a guy I worked with in Germany, John Murray, we were talking about this. Like, if you're not constantly improving your position on the camp in terms of with the local commands, with the local assets, you just don't have enough people to not do that. Like, you have to always do it. And so, and like you said earlier, if you see me talking to someone, I'm working and you're never going to know it. I'm making friends. I'm talking to the EOD people. I'm talking to the FUOPs, the CUOPs, the command, whoever it is. I'm always talking to someone because they need to know who I am. I need to have trust with them. I need their support, much more so than out in the villages. Like, I can go in the villages all day long, but if nobody cares when you come back on camp, then why am I going out?
Exactly. And you never sit with your own people in the chow hall. You're always mingling. We had a 4-person translators. We had to be out talking to people, no choice. It was the only way to stay alive and get your vehicles fixed and get whatever you needed for your next mission. Get someone to give you an SUV to drive so you didn't have to drive the Humvees. I mean, you're always interacting.
I would say that is the most of my work focused on balancing out that side of the equation, dealing with the Army or whoever I was with, State Department, whoever I was helping, in making sure they understood the impact of what I was bringing them. Because if not, you would be irrelevant. Like, the second you stopped working those relationships, your irrelevance just started climbing and climbing.
Yeah. What do you have for me today? It doesn't matter what you did yesterday.
Yeah. And you're right. If you're not talking to someone different in front of someone else's eyes, so like I figured a thing out that if you brought VIP Afghans onto the camp, and I figured this out in Iraq, but I really got good in Afghanistan. So I would prearrange it with the sergeant of the guard, I'd prearrange it with the commander, and I would bring these elders on. And I would say, you're not searching this guy. You're going to treat this person as if they're from Congress. You can be like, hey, yes, sir. Yes, Sayed. Come on in. You're our guest, right? And that's what you're going to do. And I'm going to walk down. I'm going to walk in with them. We're not going to search them or anything. And then I'm going to take them to the chow hall and give them all the ice cream and muffins they want. And we're going to sit there and they can have whatever they, and it drove KBR crazy. But I had a note from the commander. And then other commanders would come in and be like, who's Pete talking to? And so they would come up and introduce, and I would get people to come on the camp who no one even knew, but they had looked for years, ultimately, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing what you can learn over a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Which job is harder, PsyOps or CI, or can you even balance that out?
Well, CI, we usually had someone watching our back when we go out, usually with someone. At least the guys I worked with, because like I said, I didn't do it on deployment. So they usually had some sort of combat arms, infantry. But with PsyOp, we were on our own. We rolled out in 2 Humvees, no crew served weapons. We were lucky if we got a translator. I mean, we had a sat phone. That was our communication, usually. So it was a bit dangerous at times.
Very similar to my deployments. We would go out and maybe you had an infantry platoon, but sometimes you didn't. Sometimes you just had, hey, what's the minimum number of vehicles that we can go camp to camp with? It's 2. Okay, well, that's how we're going to patrol. And you and I both know you can't get into a fight in that case. We had 2 M16s and 3 9mm with our interpreters 9mm. You know, you can't get into a fight in that situation. You have to survive on other things like trust and everything else. How do you do that? How do you day to day go out into that dangerous area knowing that you can't bite off anything because no help is coming anytime soon, at least not while you're alive? How do you work in that environment?
Well, it's all about relationships. You have to find someone you can kind of trust. You have to earn their respect and earn their trust. You know that talking to them, and once you get that, then that's your foot's in the door. After that, it's all how you behave, how you respect them, treat them like they're the most important person in the world, unless they don't want you to, and then you kind of just talk to them on the side. It really just depends on the relationship you've developed.
What if it's just a farmer or a business owner, someone who runs, some kind of shop or whatever, and you're talking to that person? How do you stay safe in those situations?
Well, you just go back to all your soldier skills you learned growing up in the Army and use your instincts on when it's time to go, it's time to go. Or, okay, we've got another half hour here. Things are looking okay. And it's all about your team. How long have you been with your team? Have you trained with your team more than just your pre-deployment, a couple weeks? And do you trust each other? It's all about the team.
Okay, so let's say I show up as an augmentee to a unit. You're an augmentee, so now I'm there, and you go like, "Hey, we go out. Do you want to go out with us?" How do you know? What do you want to see from me to understand that I am worth a seat on a patrol that you're going out on? I mean, I know I am, but I've got to prove it to you. So, what does that look like? What's that conversation look like?
Well, the conversation happens before you leave the base. You just sit down and you try to find some common background. Where have you been? What courses have you taken? Where have we been together? Because it's a pretty small community. Both CI and PsyOp are very small communities. So you're going to know someone who's, crossed your paths at some point in time. At that point, once you get some sort of commonality, then you can start to develop a trust and a relationship. But if you're told someone's on your team and they're going out with you, they're going out with you. You just got to develop that as best you can before you leave the wire.
I'm pretty critical of PsyOps overall, and it's not because of the individual PsyOp soldier. It's because of the control over the top and the adherence to the playbook, because the playbook basically doesn't work from my experience, right? Like we'll go out and we'll brief the capacity of a radio. This radio can shoot out 1.5K in every direction. Therefore, we're hitting 40,000 people in this area. And the big data point I always heard was they want to hear more music. And then I would go out with the radio and I'd listen. Nothing but static. And I'm like, hey, this radio isn't working. And I would let the SAP person know I was doing this, but they briefed a capacity. They didn't brief the actual results of that. And I know you guys know how to do this. I know you guys know how to market and all that kind of things, but it never happens. It's as if nobody in PsyOps above the operating team cares about that stuff. So I would go out and be like, I had a radio. I also asked people like, hey, if you want to hear a song, what do you do? And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't listen to that radio. And so we had all these disconnects with the PsyOps in Afghanistan and Iraq. Very challenging environment. What makes that job so hard? Why am I so easily able to tear apart what a PsyOps team is doing? And we're talking seasoned people that know their stuff, but I would spend a lot of time with those guys if they were present, because I knew that they were not force multipliers. They were force negative because they weren't getting the job done that they thought they were doing.
Yeah, you were working with the wrong teams, but the problem with the setup is the command structure is pretty light on the top. So you got usually an E6 running a team, and you have to have a competent E6. And what we would do, we would have all the equipment in the Humvees. So if we got to a radio station and it wasn't working, we had a technical guy that knew how to set that up, and we would get the radio station running. We had translators that could speak all the different dialects of whatever area we were in. But you're right, it's hard. The biggest problem we had was when you get over there and you got these young guys that are PsyOp guys. As soon as you get over there, they, stop shaving and, want to grow a beard and want to pretend they're special forces, and they're out there, in their Humvees. Some of them have SUVs. The hardest part is to remind them why you're there in the mission. And we were handing out soccer balls, we're handing out the radios. You just have to be prepared. That's the hardest part, because you're not going to get a lot of support going up the chain of command because you're a small unit in a big army.
One of the lessons I learned in Iraq was we had these billboards that we could have any message put on them. And one day the mayor was talking to us and he's like, hey, can we just change that one billboard? And instead of a flower that says, peace or whatever message we chose, he's like, I'd like to say this very specific thing. And it blew our minds. We'd never considered asking the mayor of an area, like, what message they want to put out. And so we brought that to the PsyOp person, and this guy was a very good PsyOp, and he's like, absolutely, whatever that guy wants to say, I'm on board. But he was older. He had done this a lot, and he's like, I don't care what my bosses say. They send me these stupid newspapers. I don't give that shit out because it doesn't work. I'm going to spend my time doing things that works. And if the mayor wants to put a message on the billboard, I'll be goddamned if I'm not going to do it.
Absolutely. That's the first thing you get out there. And you do your target audience analysis, which I keep going back to, so you know what they're interested in and what their message. And what I found to be the most, when you were talking about the farmers, we would do radio TV shows. Instead of just having anybody on there, we would get the vet from the base, or we would get a nurse, an ER nurse. We had a couple of doctors that would go out with us, and we had a chaplain that would go out with us. And by the time we were done, we'd have a whole village standing there asking questions. It's all a matter of knowing your audience and what they're interested in.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Because you're right, they don't normally have a television, and most of them don't have radios unless we give it to them. And maybe they've seen a leaflet that was dropped out of a helicopter if we're lucky.
Maybe. Yeah, and they're like, you dropped that leaflet and a packet of other ones on my goat, and it's dead now. And you're like, God damn it, did we really do that?
All of them landed in the same yard.
Yeah. So with the PsyOp thing again too, it's very challenging, and I want to give you guys all the credit because it is a very hard job. But like in a place like Afghanistan, where there's quite often no electricity, or whatever it is, and you go out, and it's like you said before, the permissibility of the area makes it very hard to go out and do a very good survey. And then if the survey is written well, because a lot of these surveys come from higher and they're terrible. They're like, one of them was, if we gave you a radio, would you listen to it? Says the guy with the gun, And it's just all these yes, no questions. And I'm like, that's a horrible, horrible survey,
It's got to be a conversation. You got to get them talking.
Yeah, and you can have those questions and you can get those answers, but I'll get you 10 more through a conversation that'll give you a lot more detail. Like one of the things we had was we're talking to a guy about the messaging, and he's like, yeah, you guys put out prayers. I don't know who you have reading them, but they're not from around here. And these are country folks. These are farmers who are nowhere near the government. And this was an Afghan guy reading the prayers and everything else. And they're like, I don't know what he's reading from, but that's not our Quran. I was going to say Bible, but it didn't work for them.
Right. And they've got 3 or 4 different dialects. So you got to be real careful.
The PsyOps folks weren't
and one thing we had to deal with is when we would go, right, we would go and we'd geostation up and running. We'd give them everything they needed, and then 3 days later, someone would blow it up.
Yes.
So it's hard to keep them going.
It is hard to keep them going. I wanted to ask you a little bit.
They had these semi trucks.
Yeah,
the radio TV semi trucks. There were like, I think Saddam had 50 of them, and one of our taskings was to try to find them. We found one. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, where'd the rest of them go?
Probably Syria. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Sold somewhere.
Maybe they buried it somewhere.
Yeah, they love to bury things. That's for sure. Can you talk at all about your job now?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm a complete above the board counterintelligence officer for the Department of Energy. We have 14 national labs doing all kinds of various, anywhere from basic biology research to nuclear research. And our job basically is to protect the science, protect the proprietary information, and protect scientists when they travel. We do our pre-briefs, our debriefs, and then we have a lot of foreign scientists that visit our labs. So we have to train and interview the hosts to make sure everybody's doing what they say they're going to do, and that we're not getting people from areas or organizations that we don't want working on our labs.
I heard a stat during the Trump presidency. Go ahead.
No, go.
I heard a stat during the Trump presidency that we open a CI investigation against China every 17 hours. I mean, on average. I mean, it's not like a clock, but more than one a day.
That figure wouldn't surprise me. They're very active. They're one of our, top 3 competitors in the world, and their gross national product's probably going to pass us in the next 10 years. So, yeah, we'll be aware of that.
One of the things that I've learned about, because we think about Department of Energy, you don't think about counterintelligence, but you have to. So you have the threat of all of these labs and plants and everything, but also we have the threat to the network, and we bring in equipment that comes from God knows where, whether it's China or somewhere else, and it's attached to our electrical grid. There's also this mechanical, like what you call in the old days, like MDCI kind of multidiscipline counterintelligence, where, what is this transformer, for lack of a better word? What is this thing doing here, and what is it doing there with all of these state and federal assets? Is there a state and federal loophole there that people that are exploiting against us? How does this stuff impact us?
Well, what they're doing is they're sending people in. A lot of college students are coming in, and they're getting, they're free labor basically. If you can get a scientist to come in and do research for you, and you don't have to pay them, that's a win-win, right?
Yeah.
The problem is, where are they coming from, and what are their motives? And that's all part about having relationships with all our scientists, your department head, division heads on the lab. Having a stakeholder meeting, talking about what's important, making sure you're talking to your legal representatives, your export control experts, and each expert in, subject matter expert in each field. So if you have a question, which, being a, liberal arts major counterintelligence guy, I can walk into a big building on a lab, and I'm probably the dumb in the building, but I got to know what I'm talking about. And it goes back to everything else. It's all about building relationships.
I wanted to say this before I forgot to say it. I've always said to people, if I'm doing my job well, you'll see me having a great time and think Pete's just fucking around, right? Because I'm having these conversations. And bits of these conversations stick to me and stick in my brain. And one of the other compliments I quite often get is Pete, you can have a conversation about anything. But I think this is what makes guys like us, because we both have undergrads in in communication. And so we've sort of learned to do these things. What is that? I mean, it's not a necessary skill because not everybody approaches the job that way, but is that what opens the door for us, that we're able to find common ground with people and speak intelligently about a lot of things, even if it's just paper thin intelligence? I mean, look, it's impressive enough that people quite often say that to me. So there's a tool there. Can you help me understand?
Yeah, what I would do and what I still do is if I know I'm going to go talk to a scientist, first thing I'm going to do is go out and look up his papers. And I'm going to read his last 2 or 3 papers so I know what he's doing his research on. And that starts the conversation, because I don't walk in not knowing anything, because that's the key. And some of them just don't want to talk to you. So you approach them, say, okay, I'm a liberal arts major professor. You just go into your professor and explain this quantum reactor in layman's terms so that I can understand it. And they'll get up and they'll be on the whiteboard and they'll be writing stuff. And I may not know half the words, but you bet I'm taking notes and I'm asking questions about stuff that I read in his paper or her paper.
Yeah, if you can read through an abstract, oh my goodness, you unlock because they're desperate to talk about their paper. They're desperate to talk about their research. It's such a powerful tool.
That's their money.
Awesome. Yeah. When I had Dexter Holland from The Offspring on the show, he had just recently been awarded his PhD. So, I read his abstract for his dissertation, and we talked about messenger RNA and its link to like certain codes equaling AIDS. That's what his paper was on. And he was ecstatic to talk about that. It cracked him wide open, and we never had to worry about establishing rapport because he just handed it over when I talked about his abstract.
Yeah, you've had some great guests. I really like the Stuart Copeland interview.
Oh,
there's been many really good ones.
I've been beating on you for just about an hour.
My son's getting into doing podcasts.
Nice. That's fantastic. Yes. Yeah. It's funny. Our kids are in their 20s.
You're the only person I couldn't say no to.
Yes. That's my CI skills. Hey, I want to give you the chance to ask me any questions because I know I've been hammering you. So what do you want to throw at me?
Well, we talked about, the failings of PsyOps in the field, but I want to know, as far as in today's world, because you're out there, you're talking to people, you're going to conferences. I know you're a cultural background expert. What would you think is our main weakness right now? What is it that we're just missing the point on? Because they're catching up to us.
Like China or PsyOps or who is who's the we that we're talking about?
What is our biggest failing now? What's our weak link?
We focus too much on threat. And you go out, and you have to have some people focused on threat, but you go out to do whatever it is in whatever country it is. The commander's got a 4-line mission statement, and most of those things aren't dealing with threat. Most of it's dealing with creating capacity. So if you don't know, and units just don't train on this, right? And so the collectors don't collect on it. But if you don't know all of the influencers in the area, not just like the dangerous people. I mean, how many times have we chased, I don't know, Muhammad Ali, around trying to find this guy who doesn't exist, for all intents and purposes? You're not going to find him. Meanwhile, I'll go out and I'll go find the guy that all of the internally displaced people, the IDP population, who do they go to? That's a hugely important person, and they're connected in ways that the command would want to know about. And so we don't focus on that non-lethal side, even though most of the time our mission is primarily a non-lethal mission. I would say that's the biggest failing, is our desperation to go find people to kill leads to us killing not enough people who are bad, and then also a lot of people who aren't as bad. So we're trying to gather friends, and we're not doing a very good job of it. Is what I would say is a big weakness on the tactical human collection CI side.
Yeah, I would mean on that is that because of the threat, and it always goes back to that, everything's gone into the cyber realm now, and I really think that we're overlooking the human intelligence side of things. I think it's really been overlooked in the past 10 years or so. It's a skill you can lose if you're not doing it every day.
Yeah, I mean, we've got members of Congress with active Chinese spies on their staff. So where are there not not just China, right? Everybody's trying to gather information and gather influence.
Right.
So where do they not exist if they can be on the staff or in the beds of congressional members? And that's not a knock on any party or anything. It's just a fact. If there's 2 of them in the last 5 years, then there's 100 of them. Let me ask you this question. It's kind of along the same way.
Yeah, that's where I'll make my one
Yeah.
and only political pitch. One political pitch is that we need term limits.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. When I say to you that
Term
in the
limits for all
last
of Congress.
yes, when I say to you in the last 10 years, we've had top secret SCI on a server that's in someone's house. We've had a Chinese spy as at least a Western state's chief of staff. We've had a Chinese spy in someone's bed who's in Congress. If I gave you those opportunities as a counterintelligence agent, and I said, Mitch, I'm going to give you these opportunities in China, going the other direction, or in any other country, as a CI agent, like if that was a possibility, if you were running operations, you would salivate at the chance. Like, this place is so exploitable. I mean, that's the other thing is like we'd rather have a fight about what politics are there as opposed to closing down these loopholes, these places where people are exploitable. I mean, it's crazy to me knowing what we do and how persistent, and all you got to do is give me more money and I can have more capacity. It's crazy to me, man.
Yeah, and the problem is, they talk about all the immigration stuff, but we're a melting pot. Anyone can come here, and they all look different, but it's really hard for us as Westerners to go to a country like China, one of the other countries, and actually try to blend in. It's really a hard fought process even to get in there, and you can't get the support. Like you said, you can't get the money.
Yeah. Well, and if you do the job too
so what do we do?
overtly, if you're too blunt, they kick you out of the country at best. Here we're like, hey, how about a franchise? Would you like to stay? We're so welcoming and trusting.
Well, that's why you develop the relationships, and you talk to the other people that actually have the access to go there. That's how you counter it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Placement and access. We don't want to get too close to the line with classified stuff, but someone who has placement and access is valuable. Trying to develop that is hard. Hey, anything in closing at all before I wrap this thing up?
Well, I just want to thank you for your time and you kept pushing me for about a year there, and I finally said yes. I wanted to say no, but I couldn't. So it's always nice talking with you. We've known each other for a really long time. Our kids are the same age. Yeah. We've just watched them all grow up, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Do you talk to anybody else from that era of our counterintelligence life?
I have a couple guys that I know on LinkedIn, and I do talk to a lot of the people I did PsyOps with, but not all the way back to when we were doing the CI stuff. You're probably about the only one, other than a couple hellos, how you doing on LinkedIn. That's about it.
Yeah. Well, if you have contact with Barbara, I'd love to connect with that guy.
Yeah, the last time I talked to him was 21 years ago. That's how long we've been doing this.
Yeah. Oh, man, that's crazy. All right, stand by. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you